Very good Sunday morning to you from the KTN News Center here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Many thanks for joining us on Inside Politics. We are glad you could join us this 11th day of April 2021. We have a lot to talk about, including ongoing political alignments and realignments. The biggest one being talk of Raila Odinga-William Ruto political alliance going into 2022. We'll get into that following Oparanya's matchmaking efforts that we've been reporting for about over the last couple of days. We also will talk about the headline on the Sunday Standard, the lady fixing Uhuru Kenyatta's succession arithmetic. Just who is Nancy Gitau? We'll talk about all those, plus Mutahi Ngunyi, her sidekicks, permutations and predictions going into 2022. And also the IMF has approved a 255 billion shilling loan to Kenya, and Kenyans are not happy. We'll talk about Kenya's debt crisis. Many thanks for being with us. Stay with us for the next 120 minutes as we dissect some of these stories for you. Let's get right into it. And speculation that Deputy President William Ruto and ODM party leader Raila Odinga are in talks over a possible alliance in the 2022 presidential race continues to gather momentum. This follows a 5-hour meeting between Kakamega Governor, who is also ODM Deputy Party Leader Wycliffe Oparanya, and his party boss Odinga in Karen, a day after Oparanya met Ruto in Narok. Oparanya told KTN News that he had informed Odinga about his meeting with the DP and agreed that once he returns, he would appraise the former Prime Minister on the outcome. So, is Oparanya the deal maker? Let's begin with KTN senior political reporter Duncan Haimba.
That Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya is a man on a political mission is clearly not in doubt. A day after his meeting with Deputy President William Ruto in the expansive Masai Mara Game Reserve, on Friday morning, the second-term governor was at Raila Odinga's Karen residence for yet another high-profile meeting that lasted about 5 hours.
You know, this was not a planned meeting. It was a chance meeting. My party leader was not aware of this trip. But however, I called him. When I arrived there and when I found that the deputy president was there, I called him that this might be news as it is now. Don't be surprised. I'm here. And he said, okay.
Oparanya denies being an Odinga-Ruto deal maker, but admits that his meeting with Ruto, which went late into the night, centered on 2022 presidential race.
He says he has already mobilized 140 MPs there with him. So he's waiting, he's ready. And he's also ready to go into coalition with anybody who feels that they can form a government together. Yeah. So you see, me, I will not commit myself because I had not got permission to discuss coalition issues. So I said, okay, as a party also, when time reaches, obviously we have party structures. So we'll have also to discuss this particular issue and see which coalition is suitable for us, because we want to be in the next government.
Highly placed sources say Oparanya and Ruto talks focused on a possible power-sharing pact with two scenarios. One whereby Raila Odinga runs for one term as president with a deputy from Mount Kenya region, and names being floated include Martha Karua and Mwangi Kiunjuri, while Ruto taking the prime minister's slot for one term as well. In this scenario, Governors Hassan Joho and Oparanya would be deputy prime ministers. The second permutation would have Ruto running as president and Odinga as premier, both having deputies as crafted in the scenario one. The two proposals being premised on the possibility of constitutional amendment that would alter the structure of governance. Kitui Governor Charity Ngilu, who is being enticed to join the talks, is said to be adamant that she will run for a second term as Kitui County boss. An insider has intimated that Ruto Odinga talks are in response to fears that President Uhuru Kenyatta could be crafting his own succession strategy, which might not favor the two, hence the One Kenya Alliance formation. As the governor denied being an emissary, He was at the airport with the members of Raila Odinga's inner sanctum, Siaya Senator James Orengo, Governors Joho and Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, all who are flying out of the capital to Mombasa and Western Kenya regions.
Yesterday when I came, I met Eugene Wamalwa. Eugene Wamalwa, you know, is a colleague. We work together, especially on issues to do with Western Kenya, the Luhya politics and Western. So we had a meeting yesterday, and Mombasa Kitui joined us, and we discussed also various issues, including this particular meeting.
Governor Joho, actually his flight was supposed to leave much earlier. His flight has been delayed. Otherwise, probably would not have met him here at all.
I mean, politicians must be free. We have freedom of movement, association, talk.
The Deputy President's camp is yet to comment on the two meetings, with the sources telling KTN News that DP's think tank is considering the offers on the table. Duncan Hemba, KTN News.
Thank you, Duncan. So that was on Friday, and like Haimba was reporting there, we understand the Uhuru side may be drafting a succession plan of their own. We'll get into that a bit later. Let's talk about this talk of Raila Odinga, William Ruto, possible political alliance before 2022. I am joined in studio this morning by political strategist Kipchumba Karori. Kipchumba, we've missed you on the show for a couple of weeks. Welcome back. We also have with us former member of parliament for Awendo in the county of Migori, Jared Opio. Welcome to the show, sir. We also have communication strategist Mark Bichache joining us on Zoom, as is governance expert Hesbon Owila. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining me. Let's get into it. Kipchumba, is there anything to this talk, or are we overplaying this talk of Ruto Odinga alliance?
I think, Ben, we must start from the premise that politics has no permanent friends and foes. Politics is all about the constant move of interest. But we must also come back and discuss the issue that most of these coalitions are red herring coalitions. They are media pull together kind of coalitions, because when people meet per chance, you can't say that there was a coalition being grafted. But politicians...
Well, it's our work to try and dig and try to find out what's really happening.
And you are rightly doing so, but at times we dig too deep into conspiracy theories. But the other question we need to ask ourselves is this: what if Raila Odinga and William Ruto were to meet? What kind of a brand of politics are we bringing together? What kind of aspirations will the future of this country hold? And then the other question we further ask is this: William Ruto has for a long time been consistent on what he wants. He's bringing together hustlers, the issue of bottom-up economics, the issue of spreading wealth to the nation, and the issue of running away from tribal kingpins. I think all this discussion must be seen within that. And on the other side, Raila Odinga's party has just concluded a presidential nomination kind of a setup, whereby we have had, apart from the April Fool's joke, we know there are 3 presidential candidates. So at the end of the day, we must ask ourselves, how will this settle? And lastly, Ben, on the Raila-Ruto coalition, the question is this: who comes on top? Both of them have their... one has a constitutional hurdle that William Ruto can deputize Raila Odinga. That is a fact when you go to the Constitution of Kenya. The other question is this: will Raila Odinga agree to come and join the Hustler Nation as a supporter instead of being the one coming and taking the head on? Those are the questions supporters of the two political leaders will have to contend with going to the future. But there is one thing that we must underscore. There is a lot of hygiene when our political leaders talk together. Okay. When our political leaders seem to be having a discussion. It is good for the nation.
All right. Bishop Pio, what is your take on this? Does Odinga need to craft such an alliance from what you understand?
What I must say is that we are in a season where politicians will start doing coalitions. And Raila Odinga and the Deputy President, William Ruto, are actually key players in the political matrix of the country. And when there is talk that they are talking and are almost forming, are intent on forming alliances, that cannot be wished away. Let me say that the two politicians have worked together in the past. And just to tell you the truth, William Ruto went to Moi Primary School. He studied in Emilio Kibaki Secondary School and went to Raila Odinga University. So really, the way he plays his politics is not very far from what Raila does. And if they choose to work together, I can tell you that will be a big thing. If they start speaking and thinking of forming an alliance, then I can tell you it will be earth-shaking and they can easily form the government. So when I heard that Oparanya is like doing a reconnaissance, going forth to do the initial conversations, I thought that is something close to a genius. And if and when they start working together, you will see the way the politics of this country will move.
That's a very interesting quip there, that Ruto went to Moi Primary School, Emilio Moi Kibaki Secondary School, and Raila Odinga University. Interesting there. Hesbon Owila, let me bring you into this conversation. From what we've gathered from our sources, it's something that is answering the question that Kipchumba was asking earlier, that who plays second fiddle to who. There has been a proposal to have Raila Odinga run for president for one term with William Ruto as Prime Minister, and running mates that have been mentioned include Martha Karua and Mwangi Kiunjuri. Governors Oparanya and Joho have been mentioned for the position of Deputy Prime Minister. This is another a flip to the ticket where we have Odinga going for the Prime Minister's position and Ruto going for the top job. What are your thoughts?
I think two most critical things here are how Odinga and Ruto would make a decision on who goes for the top seat and who goes for the premiership. Because one thing is clear, the Constitution bars the deputy president from being, a deputy president again. And then the other thing that is clear is that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga probably has occupied positions that are way heavier than the deputy president. So he's unlikely to go for that. It is also very tenuous to think of him going as the premier, because that would then mean he has to go and contest an election as a member of parliament, which brings a lot of complications in the whole matrix. So if I was to peep into my crystal ball, I would say that the safest bet, if this was to happen, the safest bet for them would be for the deputy president to go for the premiership position. But then, even if the deputy president was to go for the premiership position and Raila goes for the presidency, the critical issue that will determine whether they are going to win or not is how they distribute the other positions. Because it is one thing to say that the deputy president brings serious political capital and Raila brings his capital. But they only bring that because of the morphology of their political formations now.
All right.
When they join forces, that is likely to change. So there is no guarantee that when they join forces, all the lieutenants who have been with Raila Odinga will still remain intact. And there is also no guarantee that when they join forces, all the lieutenants who have worked so hard with the deputy president for almost the last 9 years will remain intact. So that means that for any formation that they craft, there will always be a bit of an addition, but they need to be very careful of who they are likely to lose depending on those formations. But let me say this. I think coalition building, our constitution allows for coalition building, and I think I agree with Kipchumba that it's a good thing when our political leaders are talking, because then it tells the citizenry that we can also have a conversation that is constructive without being enemies because of these political leaders. And then secondly, from where I see it and my understanding of the Kenyan democracy, pre-election coalitions are essentially better.
All right.
Our constitution provides for both pre and post. And the reason is very simple. that these pre-election coalitions, especially against the backdrop of what the BBI provides, gives these politicians a lot of access to different parts of the country. And this is good for the citizenry, because then it will allow the citizenry to listen to these politicians and interrogate what they have to offer.
All right. Mark Bichache, give me your thoughts on these latest developments, and also tell me this, from a messaging perspective, Raila Odinga has been known to fight for the common man, but some pundits are saying that his politics has moved from the left to the center and out to the right. Deputy President says he is proposing a bottom-up kind of economic development for Kenyans, saying that he's fighting for the hustler. How do the two marry their ideologies together if they were to form a coalition?
Ben, thanks for the question. And let's actually begin here. I would like to quote one of my favorite Kenyan poets, and he's the Uasin Gishu governor, when he says that politics is held in the lungs, it's not in the heart, and you must learn to excel. So the first lesson that we learn is Mchawi is never Mchawi for too long, and Nasa How does never lasts too long in the mouths of our politicians. And then that brings me to the answer to your question, that there is no such philosophy that you can hold Raila or Ruto down to and say that this is what they've sworn to do. The hustler narrative is exactly what it says. It's a story. It is a Cinderella story that is not grounded on any economic theory, but is grounded on pushing up the emotions of the people. In fact, in terms of studying the hustler movement is equal to studying Tibim and Tialala. They both have no consequence in terms of the real politics of this country. Now, that brings the question as to why is this coalition building an important conversation to the two politicians. It is important for two reasons. Number one, from Ruto's point of view, he has just come out of a loss in very many by-elections in which he expected his UADA outfit to do very well. And number two, Raila Odinga is coming from a perspective where his former supporters, his former colleagues in the NASA alliance seem to be forming another alliance altogether. So what these two politicians are doing is they're trying to jumpstart the conversation based on a trajectory they feel comfortable with, because this trajectory makes them the politicians to watch. It gives them the headlines as it has for the last week or so. Now, what is the culmination of this? The culmination is this, that the cacophony I have prophesied on this show week upon week is going to continue. Why? Because we know the same Joho, for example, is saying he wants to form a coast party. And then in the same breath, we hear that he's running for the ODM presidential ticket. And therefore, these are people who are testing their waters. They're dipping their toes in the waters to know what will Kenyans appreciate and what won't they appreciate. But for the general public, the lesson we need to learn is this, that let's not hold people as wachawis in our heart because our leaders told us so. Neither should we think that our leaders hold themselves to this standard by which they abuse each other. Instead, when push comes to shove, when it is beneficial to them, they will form an alliance and they will advance their agenda. The question is, how much of our own selfish agenda are we able to push them? That said, I do congratulate the two leaders, William Ruto and Raila Odinga, for showing the willingness to work together, because I can tell you for sure, even on my social media, the insults have reduced because the two sides are not fighting. And this is a very good thing for the country.
Very quick question, Mark. Would you say such a coalition would be formidable, unbeatable almost?
It's the practicality of it is very difficult, constitutionally speaking. Simply because it means one of them has to be willing to run for MP. But should they come together and form a coalition, then it would be a proper, formidable coalition. In fact, the other alliance, the One Kenya alliance, would be shaking in its boots if the two did form a coalition.
Kipchumba, what would you advise each of the two leaders if you were to sit down with them?
I think at this point in time, Ben, we are undergoing the transition from what we have always had, the calm politics, we are going now into the next energy level of politics. We are heading into a general election. And each camp now must first of all consolidate itself before it goes into a coalition. And that helps the two candidates in first of all, making a SWOT analysis of each other and making a cross-SWOT analysis of their opponents. In that, if I am forming a coalition with, let's say, Raila Odinga, there are things that Raila Odinga brings on board that the Hustler brand cannot do on its own. And if Raila Odinga is joining the Hustler brand as a social left movement from his politics, although the handshake has moved him to the center and it has further moved him to the right side. But now assuming that ODM, the movement, is a leftist political movement and coming on board and joining the Hustler Nation, which is a liberal conservative kind of a political movement, that will mean that each side must take stock of its assets and liabilities and come forth. But my question is this: looking at the age of Raila Odinga and the health and all other factors kept constant, that coalition has a chance. It has a chance. But what must be done is that they must walk around the lyrical sycophants around the two political leaders, must be tamed if any of these has to be actualized.
We'll keep
because at the end of the day, it is not the two leaders who might have a problem, but the court poets, the court jesters, and the paper pushers might be the problem.
Istopia, very quickly, does this all depend on if the BBI passes?
I think coalitions have been formed in the past. Pre-election coalitions and post-election coalitions have been formed in the past. But I think the BBI proposed architecture presents a very good platform for negotiations because, as it were, there are so many tiers and levels of engagement of the officials. I must tell you that the misfortune with the nature of our political conversation is that in Kenya, it is not parties that form coalitions. It is actually individuals belonging to different parties that form coalitions. And that is the misfortune that we as a country have. But even as it were today, I think the BBI proposed architecture presents the best platform for negotiations when it comes to coalition building going forward.
You're watching Inside Politics here on KTN News. Many thanks for staying with us. Time for a quick commercial break. Don't go too far. When we come back, we shall be talking about partly the genesis of what we have been talking about, and that is a fact or reports that President Uhuru Kenyatta could be working on his own succession arithmetics. We'll get into that. We'll talk about the lady supposedly fixing Uhuru Kenyatta's succession arithmetic, Nancy Gitau, and her fellow political scientist and sidekick, Mutahi Ngunyi, and also take a look at some of his permutations and predictions about 2022. Don't go too far.